So we just wrapped up the first quarter 2020 ISG Index call. It's our 70th consecutive call, and I think we all came to an agreement before this call that this is maybe the most important one that we've ever done in our history, given the rapid rise and impact of coronavirus. So talk to us about broadly, how do we see the pandemic impacting our industry?
It's been a really emotional several months, Stanton, as the pandemic has spread across the globe. We've seen significant and potentially long-lasting economic impact across the globe that's absolutely impacted the outsourcing industry. We have millions now working from home and complete economies and industries shut down, and the impact of this virus is going to be felt for months, if not years.
So let's talk specifically about Q2. What do we think Q2 looks like in terms of the financial impact of the virus?
So we're going to see a significant drop in Q2. We just don't see any way around it. We're looking at each industry. Certainly some industries are much more impacted between travel and transportation, retail, a little bit of CPG, energy, manufacturing, financial services. And I think overall, we're anticipating the market is going to drop 17% quarter over quarter and over 20% year over year from what was a strong Q2 last year.
So Steve, we talked about, and I think we all recognize the next quarter or two is probably going to be really, really tough. What do we think maybe late Q3 and into Q4 looks like?
Yeah, we expect spending levels to return by late Q3. I think likely September, and then are really anticipating sort of a 15% increase in Q4 and into Q1 of next year. And Stan, I know your team did a great survey over the past couple of weeks with over 130 of our clients and advisors. And I think what we saw was 60% of those clients thought discretionary spend would really be on hold for the next 90 to 120 days plus. And I think we're seeing that across the board.
So let's talk about enterprises. And so what's the guidance that you're giving your clients around their immediate response to the pandemic?
Cost takeout and cash infusion is absolutely the top priority. Clients really need to assess software licensing, given the furloughs and layoffs, network deals, what we call ARC-ROOK structures, but essentially the pricing units for deals, and really assess their operational resiliency in all areas to reduce their costs. As we looked over the global delivery centers, we think, we're about 80% of normal productivity, but that still means that we're building large backlogs and building backlogs in many activities. So managing these critical tasks in the backlog is really probably the most urgent task at this moment.
So let's stay on the topic of providers. Kind of what's our guidance to them in the near term? What should they be doing?
Providers really need to be supportive and open with their enterprise clients. They need to be honest. They need to be transparent. They need to talk about the challenges and what are the mitigation steps and work closely together to solve those. I know it's not going to be easy. Suppliers know it's not going to be easy. Clients know it's not going to be easy, but we're really all in this together. And it's important that we all work together to solve these problems.
We talked earlier about sort of the recovery. We're thinking 90 to 120 days. Are there any specific industries that we think that are going to come back faster or potentially that are going to be more impacted longer?
So when we look at individual industries, there's a couple that jump right out. I think travel and transportation, as we've already mentioned a couple times, will be weak. It's going to be difficult for those organizations to recover quickly. The loss of revenue is absolutely going to impact, their technology plans throughout the rest of the year. I think retail is going to be similar. I think the challenges that we're going to see in retail is a lot of organizations were just woefully unprepared for this. They've got massive supply chain disruptions. They've had issues with B2C. They've had issues with customer centricity and having the insights to understand who their customers are and what they're doing. We've had other retailers that have been phenomenal, that had great B2C capabilities, that were able to completely convert their stores into mini distribution centers, had curbside pickup and everything quickly arranged as soon as people could get out and travel. So you're going to see this big disconnect on the retailers. And I think you'll see sort of a big spend, if you will, in Q4 and early Q1 to close that gap.
So just broadly, how do you see the pandemic impacting technology spending in the short term and in the long run?
Yeah, short-term discretionary spending is absolutely going to be suppressed in Q2. When we look at discretionary spend across the industries, I would suspect 15 to 20% decline in discretionary spending across a typical ITO deal.
Okay, Steve, let's talk about cloud. So this is a topic we both love. We started helping our clients with cloud 7, 8, 9 years ago. Still see incredibly strong demand for both migrating workloads to hyperscalers and starting to build cloud native applications. Just incredibly exciting area. Let's talk how cloud you think is going to impact the overall as a services market and sort of what's short-term and long-term outlook for the as a service market.
I love the story of the cloud providers right now, Stanton, because I think it does everything that we've talked about, for the last 7+ years. The hyperscalers obviously have the scale, they have on-demand compute, they have variable pricing. They're able to provide all the variability that organizations need in these times. So imagine yourself sitting with fixed assets in a data center and no way to shed the costs as your business is dropping 90%. Now imagine that same thing and say your reservation system is in the cloud and it drops 90%. Well, guess what? Your revenue or your costs for the cloud are going down as well. So it's much more aligned to what you expect the business dynamics to be. I also think the cloud providers have done an amazing job really scaling up to support the work from home. Again, whether it's video or collaboration or all of the tools that are being put together rapidly, we've just seen this flood of innovation coming out of the hyperscalers. I will say, though, it's really tough to predict the overall as a service market. And the challenge that I see is a lot of the SaaS providers, so the software as a service providers, are going to have challenges with their cost structures, certainly some of the user pricing, because the more layoffs you have, the less users you're going to have on ServiceNow or Salesforce or Workday or others. So that's going to have an impact. But I think what we'll see is a 5% rise overall in the ACV for the second quarter. And I think we'll still be surprised and see, 12% to 15% increase by the end of the year for the as a service market. So I think it'll be a highlight of the market when we look back.
Okay, so let's talk about managed services. So we just talked about the forecast on the as a service side. What's our outlook on the managed services side?
So the managed services market's going to be impacted in every industry. The overall industry is really going to be down 17% in the second quarter, and on average down 7% for the full year. So we have some big challenges ahead of us.
I think we're both pretty bullish on the ability of a service provider to help enterprises build resiliency into their operating model, both through kind of a short-term cash infusion, but long-term expertise and talent.
It's interesting because I think, one, you have to build a relationship back with the enterprise clients, and they've got to know you're there for them. So some of the sacrifices that they have to make now are going to carry through in those long-term relationships. But I think from a technology standpoint, they're going to be key to helping build some of that resiliency, whether that's in the supply chain, whether that's in IoT, whether that's in better analytics, or even redefining sort of the whole customer experience. Those will all be critical areas. For more details, please visit the ISG Index page on our website, www.isg-1.com.